scientific evidence that there's that any native Massachusetts species needs logging to survive. It benefits some species, sure, but that doesn't mean it's necessary, and there's plenty of private land that allows those activities. So I won't go on because I know we're tight on time, but we urge you to support H897, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Can I hand this?
Yep, there we go.
Here. My name is Janet Sinclair. I live in Carlton-Foss. I just gave you a few handouts there. The most basic part of this law that we're looking at is that we think gives permission for logging on state land is Chapter 132, Section 40. And this bill was written in 1943. It's pretty much intact now. I gave you original copies of the original bill and later submissions of it. And what this bill did was it called for an increasing supply of forest products and for the public good. And I think that we can all guess, which suggests that in 1943 things were really different than for what would be the public good for our forests. And now we feel like, now in 2019 we should be using our forests for biodiversity, for helping with climate change. I just want to let you know that last month we collected signatures on a letter that I just submitted to you. It's letters to this committee in support of this bill. With very little effort, we collected I have submitted 1,779 signatures to you, signed by people that are very concerned about these issues. People were just signing it, people were asking us to talk with us. And this is from over 170 different towns. This was over just a course of a month, just going to a couple of places. And while we were collecting the signatures, I talked to a lot of people. I talked to many, many people that signed. And what people were saying, the two things I'd like to point out to you. One of them is that people don't know that there's logging on state land. That people think that our state land is like a national park, which is what I used to think before I knew that we were logging on it. And when people found out that we were logging on it, most people don't want logging on state land. And what we're doing, in fact, is creating a policy here that would be very, very similar to national parks, where some forest management is allowed for various circumstances, but generally speaking, not logged. And I'm not hearing anybody complaining about not logging in Yosemite. And the other thing that we heard a lot was that the Amazon rainforest was burning. People are very, very concerned about climate change, and so they were wondering, why, when the Amazon forest is burning, why are we cutting our trees in one of the state forests? So basically, people really care about these issues. We feel like the public is on our side on this. People don't. People just get it immediately. People just don't want logging on our state land. This bill would help tourism. People don't want to come to our state lands and look at logging jobs. They want to look at places like Northern Trail State Forest, which are beautiful. And the other thing is, if we did this, we would be the first state in the country to set aside our public land like what happens in a national park. And this would be, Massachusetts has a history of being in a leadership role, and we think this would be amazing if we could do it here first in Massachusetts. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Nice. Thank you very much. Welcome, Mr. Cole. Thank you very much for joining us. President Hogan?
Thank you, Chairs Goby and Pignatelli, and thank you for moving out the PFAS bill out of committee. I'm very appreciative and look forward to getting it passed and getting to work on it. So thank you very much. I'm here today for House 801 and 802. 01 is an act to facilitate and simplify grant application procedures for family farms, and it directs the Department of Agricultural Resources to develop a single form for all grants administered by the agency. The bill goes into detail. I will not. It would be very helpful to our land-rich, cash-poor farmers who spend what they call a good day, which is somewhere around 12 to 16 hours on the land, and it makes it difficult to participate in programs when they can't get here or aren't able to fill out every time there might be an opportunity certain kinds of documentation. So it would be a one-stop shop, and I think it would be a great assist to our farmers in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. My second bill, O2, is an act establishing a special commission to ensure the resiliency of family farms in the 21st century. It's a 16-member commission. As you know, Massachusetts is home to over 7,000 farms. It produces $475 million in market value products every year. These farms make the Commonwealth a leader in community-supported agriculture as well as agritourism. However, the Commonwealth is still experiencing a loss of farm and farmlands. So the act would really be helpful in creating a way to address 21st century farming, bring together stakeholders to investigate the needs of agriculture in both an evolving climate but also in an ever-evolving economy. And research suggests that farmers whose bottom line is closely linked to shifts in weather and production and natural resources are facing some of the most substantial impacts of climate change. They are certainly in some ways a canary in the mind of climate change as they deal with their 4 seasons and their crops and what they plant. So those are the 2 bills that I'm here to ask consideration for today, and I ask when you read the bills, have any questions, feel free to reach out, and that when you decide that you may vote to have these bills voted out of committee. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments?
Thank you.
All right, Susan Burge. I butchered that name, I'm sorry.
I actually yield my time to Dr. Stubblefield to continue.
We're not looking at that way, so.
I'm not allowed to do that.
Darcy Sweeney, Carol Horowitz.
Well, can she speak then if she can't yield
She
her
can,
time?
I've just called her. She doesn't want to
Yes,
talk.
So,
Hi, my name is Darcy Sweeney. I'm from Northampton. I strongly support H.897 for all the reasons so eloquently given already by other supporters of the bill. I'm not going to repeat all of those reasons. I would just like to say that I strongly believe that Massachusetts needs to get out of the business of logging our state-owned forests. And I, for one, will sleep better at night knowing that our state forests will no longer be plundered for wood and timber, but will be preserved to play a part in restoring the health of the planet and for the enjoyment of future generations. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
I'll be short too. My name is Carol Horowitz. I live in Amherst, Mass. First, I wanted to read something that was from a letter signed and given to you by Dr. E.O. Wilson from Harvard University. I think everybody's familiar with Dr. Wilson. And just one sentence from his letter about the bill. This is the most important, this is the single most important action the people of the state can take to preserve our natural heritage. And that's from E.O. Wilson. And that letter, I believe, has been given to you already. So I just wanted to briefly say that we only have a few short years to get it right on climate change. We really don't have time. Commercial logging in the state forest is the opposite of what is needed right now. The bill does allow for flexible management of state forests if needed. The forests belong to the people of Massachusetts, and you are our public servants, and we're counting on you to do the right thing by supporting this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments? All right, page 1 is done.
I was on page 1.
Who was?
Yeah, Lenore Brick.
No, you weren't.
See it?
No. Lori Westcott and Melissa Ledke.
Oh, are we together here? Yes.
Well, no, you're not
We can
together,
be.
we're just trying to-
We can be, we like each other. It's fine.
My name is Laurie Westcoat. I'm from Cambridge. I am a member of Mothers Out Front, the co-chair of the Public Planting Committee in Cambridge, and a member of the Urban Forest Task Force. I moved to Massachusetts 12 years ago and was excited for many reasons, including the beauty of the land and ocean. When traveling here for the first time, I observed the greenness and was thankful to know that I was relocating to a place that respects and protects its forests. Much has changed in just 12 years, and the acceleration of the effects of climate change are more important and urgent and apparent by the day. I'm here to strongly support H 897 as a key to mitigating climate change. Keep carbon sequestered in forest trees and let them grow bigger to continue to store exponentially more carbon as they grow. Not only is carbon held in the wood above ground, the roots of living trees deliver vast quantities of carbon to the soil, where it is also stored underground. Preservation of forests is the most fundamental way to absorb excessive carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Equally important, forests are living communities of diverse plants, animals, and other organisms. They filter the air, produce oxygen, and they are essential for all life on the planet. They are places of beauty and meaning, recreation, and inspiration and spiritual renewal. They are not commodities or warehouses to be used up. They are not resources to be conceived of and categorized as 100% renewable energy and incrementally cut down, ground up, turned into pellets and burned, thus releasing carbon back into the air and ending their capacity to store and cycle carbon. Certainly forests require wise management practices, which H 897 provides for. We live in a time that requires reassessment and rewriting of outdated laws, and we need elected officials to legislate and enforce preservation of our natural environment. We must think and act differently in this era. I urge the Joint Committee on the Environment, Natural Resources, and Agriculture to ensure that Massachusetts leads the way on forest protection for a livable future for the sake of the Commonwealth and everywhere. Thank you for your work.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm here in support also of H 897, the Act relative to forest protection. And like Flory, who just spoke, I am also a member of Mothers Out Front. After a 40-year career as a journalist, I'm finally free. I can be an activist, I can use my voice, I can speak out. And today, I'm here to speak out as a mother. Think about our lungs. What do? We breathe by moving fresh air into our bodies. And at the same time, our bodies send out what are called waste gases. Every cell in our body needs oxygen so we can live. The air we breathe contains oxygen, but other gases as well. So our lungs take that oxygen, they move it through our bloodstream, they carry it through our bodies. Each cell exchanges oxygen for our waste gas, which is carbon dioxide. Our bloodstream then carries that CO2 back to our lungs. It's then removed from the bloodstream, and then we exhale. Now, imagine you've lost one lung. Some people don't have to imagine that. This is how a survivor of an operation to remove one of her lungs begins each day. Instead of getting out of bed and walking across the room in the morning, I first sit on the edge of the bed for several minutes so my blood can rebalance before I can stand up. If I try to get out of bed too quickly, I pass out. As she explains, my heart is pumping that much harder to try to oxygenate my blood. And my left lung is working that much harder. I'm just tired a lot of the time. So what does it mean to lose a lung? It means that maybe we can't run with our children or our grandchildren, that we can't pull their sleds up a sliding hill, that we lift them up to carry them when they're sleepy and we can't, that we go to hike with them in nature and we can't keep up. Well, trees are the lungs of Mother Earth. They sustain life for all of us and for all species. Diminish their lung power and we hurt our children too. Doing so takes away this vital living resource that Earth gave us to draw down carbon. from the atmosphere. Without this drawdown, we won't come close to meeting our global goal of restraining the dire consequences of climate change. Trees as lungs do the opposite of our lungs. They draw in carbon dioxide and convert it to oxygen. When we diminish the lung capacity of our trees, we put at risk Mother Earth's ability to secure for our children, for my child, a livable climate. And this is what Mothers Out Front is about securing a livable climate for all children. It's what mothers do. We speak up when we see signs of danger approaching our children. It's our role to protect them. And that's what I'm doing here today. Let me close with this thought. I am a citizen of Massachusetts. We have no rainforests. I am also a global citizen living in a time of global climate change. With my eyes, I watch in horror and with sadness as invaluable rainforests are on fire in Brazil and Bolivia. The Amazon rainforest is the world's lungs. So that catastrophe, thousands of miles away, needs to be a wake-up call for us to do all we, as a commonwealth, can do to protect our valuable forests. The trees are our lungs, our canopy, our natural habitat, a place of wonder that is left for us to wander through with our children. Perhaps as we draw in the words of poets who sustain us too. Here's the poem When Autumn Came. Give some tree the gift of green again, let one bird sing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lenore Brick.
I thought you lost me. You didn't.
Where you sign?
It was, it's a long story. Okay. Anyway, thank you. Thank you for this. Thank you for your attention and your stamina. My name is Lenore Brick, and I am here to support H897 forest protection. I am a healthcare professional in Western Mass and a climate activist working with a group focused on sinking carbon in healthy soil, because we know now that stopping fossil fuel emissions is not enough. I've been awed and encouraged by what we've been learning about trees, especially the ecosystem of older intact forests, the carbon sequestration superheroes of the planet. Your job is, thankfully, to serve the greater good. The U.S. Forest Service has been guided by the same ethos. But what is the greatest good, and how do we decide, especially in a world whose needs have changed, and now with the climate and biodiversity crisis, our priorities, our policies, and our processes must change with it. This bill, with its very modest proposal to keep 11% of Massachusetts land, our public lands, our state forests intact, is an essential attempt to try something different than what we've been doing since the 40s. Because what we've been doing is not good enough. We're in this mess because humans have been out of sync with nature. And isn't it remarkable that the more we learn about how the world works, the more our scientific knowledge grows, the more we realize the wisdom in how nature has been doing things all along. Let's apply the latest knowledge, not even from 2006, but from 2018, 2019, 2020, into wise action, and let that teach us even more about how to intelligently, respectfully interact with the land. I think that in this case, we actually can't see the forest for the trees. Objections to this bill might sound reasonable and would be if we were following newish science, but not the latest science. What we are asking you is to look at the bigger picture, to look at the greatest need and do the greatest good. And you and we are not alone, because in this daunting task, nature's on our side and the forests know what to do. Thank you.
Questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bob Armstrong, Leslie Butonic, and John Gall will be after that.
Hi, my name is Bob Armstrong. I'm a Conway Selectman, and I chair the Climate Crisis Task Force in Franklin County. And I'm testifying in support of Susanna Whipp's Forest Protection Bill, H897. This bill is co-sponsored by my rep, Natalie Blay, and by much of our Western Mass delegation, including Paul, Mark, and Joe Comerford. I'm finding it hard to believe that once again I'm testifying about our state subsidizing the wood industry, subsidizing burning wood for heat and electricity, subsidizing new wood pellets and wood chip processors, and selling logging rights in our state forests. I'm testifying because I have lost all faith in our Department of Energy to enforce the regulations that support the state's Global Warming Solutions Act. So it's really now time for you, our legislators, to be very, very clear on where you stand on climate change, where you stand on carbon emissions. You have allowed changes to the APS so that our electric ratepayers are now subsidizing the sale of wood pellets and chips that no longer even have to be burned cleanly to qualify for renewable energy credit subsidies. Through another bill, H 853, you can support a clear statement that burning wood for heat should not qualify for renewable energy subsidies. H 853 removes the word biomass from the APS list of energy sources deserving of state subsidies. The DOER is currently pushing through regulation changes that would greatly reduce the restrictions on burning wood for electricity. So dirty wood and garbage power generators will qualify for state subsidies. Those dirty, and worse, the dirty plants in New Hampshire and Maine will qualify for our Massachusetts subsidies. So those states will no longer have to subsidize their dirty generators so that they can compete with cheaper fuels. How has our state government lost its way? How has burning wood become the energy source that gets more attention than solar or wind or hydro? When did our state decide that subsidizing the logging industry was critical at the expense of our precious state-owned forests and all the critters that depend on them, at the expense of the clean air and the water they generate and the carbon that they sequester? Thank you.
Very much.
Representative Pignatelli, it's good to see, it's actually great to see that we're both around, working for the department. It's good to see you today. I'm here today to provide testimony regarding House Bill 897. I've lived in the town of Shewsbury in western Massachusetts in 1990. I worked as a resource conservation planner and manager for the Department of Environmental Management, later the Department of Conservation and Recreation, 22 years, from 1986 to 2008. So I'm going to be giving a little bit of perspective from inside. I served for 14 years as the director of the ACEC program, and 4 years as the director of the Resource Management Planning Program for DCR. The first guidelines for preparing DCR management plans were prepared and approved under my direction. The first management plans approved by the DCR Stewardship Council were prepared and approved under my direction. Over the years, my work took me all over the Commonwealth, from the Cape to the North Shore to the Berkshires. I worked extensively with cities and towns, other state agencies, and regional statewide environmental nonprofits. After leaving DCR as a consultant, I worked for Mass Audubon, the trustees, Green Berkshires. I also served as the Western Massachusetts Program Director for the Nature Conservancy. Given this experience and the current social, environmental, and climate crisis confronting us, as others have so eloquently spoken to, I strongly support House 897. I firmly believe it can work. I especially support what I consider to be the heart of 897, Sections 1, 11, and 14. Section 1 repeats the mandate for preparing management plans for all DCR properties with extensive public participation and review. As we said 15 years ago when I was running this program, how can you manage public lands, which is a sacred trust, without knowing what and who and why you're managing for? How can you budget and allocate resources without a clear sense of priorities and methods required to meet agreed-upon goals. Section 11 speaks for itself. It is hereby declared to be the policy of the Commonwealth. All lands of the Commonwealth shall now under the care, custody, and control of the Commissioner shall, insofar as practicable, be preserved in their natural state. No commercial activities except those essential to the quiet enjoyment of the facilities by the people. Section 12 is the clincher. It contains very clear guidance for timber and vegetation management in parks and reserves. Top priority, of course, is given to preserving and conserving natural processes, with vegetation management allowed in a range of required circumstances, all of which, including management for early succession, can be authorized in an approved plan. House 897 is completely consistent with Article 97 of the state constitution, to wit, the people shall have the right to clean air and water, freedom from excessive noise, and the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic qualities of their environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm Dr. John Groff from Pittsfield. I just want to make and I'm in support of House Bill 897. And I just wanted to make one point. Trees exist in 3 states. Living trees, dead trees, and burned trees. And too much attention has been paid to what we do with dead trees and burned trees, and what we really should be doing, and which I think Bill 897 is a good start, is to focus on our living trees, which is the only mechanism we have to reduce greenhouse gases. And that's essential. And all these other considerations are important, but we're not going to have any place for the birds and the wildlife if we all get flooded out and blown away. And that's what's coming down the road. Maybe not this year or next year, but each year that a prediction is made for what the sea level rise will be by the year 2100, that prediction keeps getting deeper. And I think we simply need to pay attention to preserving living trees, to subsidize living trees. If woodlot owners want to we should be paying woodlot owners for the important work that their trees are already doing, which is sequestering carbon. That's
Thank you very much. Any questions, comments? All right, Adele Franks, Lisa Hogue, and looks like Gia Neswald.
Thank you, Chair Pignatelli and other committee members for this opportunity to address you. My name is Adele Franks, and I am from Western Massachusetts. I am a public health physician, and as such, I understand that climate change is the biggest threat to human health that we've ever had to confront, and therefore it has to be our highest priority to address. The only good news about the climate crisis is that our scientists are now devoting more attention to the dynamics about carbon in our atmosphere and are producing some very encouraging information. We're learning things that we never knew, that trees and forests capture carbon through photosynthesis and store that carbon permanently, if we allow them to, in their trunks, roots, and primarily in the soils around them. This encouraging fact has led the IPCC to declare that land use practices should and could play a huge role in helping us to avoid the worst impacts of global warming. Their latest report, in fact, encourages us to protect our existing forests, as well as to plant new ones. This is especially good news in Massachusetts because we have a lot of trees and we have a lot of forests. The challenge before us now is how to protect our existing forests. The state policies that we have now were created before we knew how important trees are to protect us from the most severe climate scenarios, and therefore we need to reconsider those policies and respond with the urgency required by our current situation and make some quick adjustments. The DCR oversees our state-owned land, including hundreds of thousands of acres of forest,
but their cutting policies and practices are not serving us well and are engendering deep public distrust. For example, DCR has just cut down old-growth oaks in Wendell State Forest and has not been responsive to inquiries about how this was justified. This convinces me that not only do we need new policies to better protect our forests, we also need better oversight of our state agencies in real time. Getting down to the legislation before you, I urge you to pass H 736, a bill that would protect our old growth trees and protect old growth forest reserves. I also urge you to favorably consider H 897 that would reclassify all of our state-owned land as parks and reserves and therefore would severely limit cutting of trees on that land. This is an essential change that would help us preserve our forests. I propose that the bill be clarified to allow the possibility of limited cutting to preserve habitat for species of greatest conservation need, not only those that are already endangered. And I think that could be easily done. I also urge this committee to hold a hearing to bring some public accountability to DCR's cutting down of old-growth oaks in Wendell State Forest. DCR has lost the trust of Massachusetts residents with its lack of transparency, and efforts are necessary to provide oversight and, if necessary, legislative remedy to any documented lapses. For example, it may be necessary to establish an oversight body that would include non-governmental and environmental organizations to approve any future cutting on state-owned land. I see that I'm out of time, so I'm going to close. It's crucial that we protect our forests, and I hope that you will take every step that you are entitled to take to protect them. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lisa Hogue. I live in Wendell, Massachusetts. I am on the Wendell Historical Commission, and my involvement with Brook Road Forest and Wendell State Forest began with my effort to protect a large complex of ancient indigenous ceremonial stone landscapes in the Wendell State Forest. And I didn't prepare my comments. I'm going to try to be brief. But there are multiple stated policies and procedures that DCR has refused to comply with, and there are also multiple mass general laws that they have refused to comply with. And in short, what that means is there is no appeal process whatsoever. There is no remedy there is no substantive way for the citizens to provide direction and guidance to our public servants in DCR as to how we want our forest assets managed. Now, our constitutions are structured as an estate trust document. John Adams wrote our constitution. It is the oldest continuously active written constitution still in effect in the world. All of the other constitutions are modeled after ours. And Article 4 says the people of this Commonwealth have the exclusive right of governing themselves as a free, sovereign, and independent state, and do and forever hereafter shall exercise and enjoy every power, right, and jurisdiction, etc. Article 5 says all of our magistrates and officials in all three branches of government are our substitutes and agents and are at all times accountable to us. They were supposed to reserve this complex. That was in the management guidelines. They did not do so. The management guidelines for the complex were supposed to be created by the specialist who identified them, who was Doug Harris, Deputy Tribal Historic Preservation Officer in Narragansett. They did not do so. Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A says that all state agencies must provide a formal administrative appeal process. Both Bill Hill, who manages the Forest Management Program, and the Assistant Attorney General, who spoke on their behalf during the injunction, said that they do not have a formal appeal process. Therefore, the people of this Commonwealth have been boxed out of any say that we have in directing and guiding the assets of our forests, which we want to survive to sequester carbon. Trees absorb 30% of the 9.4 gigatons of carbon that humans create every year. Half of that carbon is sequestered in the biggest 1%, biggest diameter trees in every forest. That means that 1/6 of the carbon that humans create is sequestered by 1% of the forest, and those are also the high-value trees, and those are the ones that people want to come for first. Furthermore, the Forest Products Trust Law says that For lands purchased before 1987, we are paid a 7% stumping fee, whereas lands after 1987 were paid a 50% stumping fee. Now in Wendell, there was a $37,600 bid award, and the town of Wendell got $3,001 for that timber. Now at the same time, they lowered our pilot money by $8,000. So, I mean, we did a rough calculation, and I have to run the numbers, but you know, we're getting compensated for 0.001% of the timber that has been forcibly taken away from us with no way to say no.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Scobie, and all of you on the committee for your service. You're here. I'm here to speak in support of H897. I taught my son about global warming when he was 9 years old in 2009, which is about the time that this great progressive commonwealth got real and serious about climate change. We all understand that progressive does not mean advancing business as usual. It means adapting our thinking as the reality of our position in the world changes. It's time to be even more boldly enlightened and progressive and recognize that our forests are our greatest resource, not for forest products, but for our survival. I've been an environmental activist for most of my life, but I've never done civil disobedience before. Since I became aware that our Department of Conservation and Recreation is acting neither with concern for our obvious climate emergency, nor with respect for the public's concern over how that greatest of resources is being managed by the agency charged by us with stewardship of those resources, I've been working nearly round the clock on a lawsuit in support of this bill, and out of an urgent need to save our forests by directly putting my body in the way of the destruction of that resource for survival. I'm doing it for my grandchildren. I'm doing it for your grandchildren. I'm doing it because someone has to do it. But that does not mean I'm alone. Rather, I am joined by many knowledgeable citizens who are dedicated to preserving our forests for the health of all of us here and all around the globe we call home. We shouldn't have to put our lives on hold and risk arrest and spend time in jail in order to hold our agency here responsible to the intent of the wise and well-established legislation like the Global Warming Solutions Act to protect the environment under our care. I hope you will agree that this oversight rests in your hands. I see this committee holding agencies to the standards of the Global Warming Solutions Act. You are called now to raise this emergency situation, global warming, to the top of your urgent priorities list in regard to every sector, every office, every agency. And why wouldn't you start in the area where you can make the most difference immediately without incurring any costs? That is by protecting our forests. I am asking you to be bold as I have finally become bold. If you don't stop the destruction of our greatest resource for survival, the consequences will be upon us all and at your hands.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Comments, questions? Thank you very much. Barb? You have to give me your last name.
Borisas.
Borisas.
Yeah, it's
Spelled
okay.
by Morgan E.
No one can pronounce it, it's all right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Didn't sound.
Okay, I'm Bart Borisas, speaking for H897 and H736. And start U.S. logging, according to recent studies, U.S. logging produces more carbon emissions than the entire terrestrial transportation sector. and yet it's almost ignored. Over the past 5 years, Karina Clemenson's team of scientists in Sweden published a series of articles in Science magazine and other peer-reviewed journals. They had discovered that the older forest is, the more carbon is sequestered in it. A forest that has not been logged for 1,000 years had slightly more than a meter of very carbon-rich topsoil. A comparable forest tract that was undisturbed by logging for 500 years contained only half the sequestered carbon of the 1,000-year-old forest, and so on, such that a regularly logged forest that is only 60 or 70 years old has only a few inches of rich, carbon-rich soil. We need to both be cutting emissions, and we need to sequester carbon, and the forest can suck carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere to store it in trees and the soils. We can't think of it as only one thing. All people are worried about is carbon emissions, but we need to suck those emissions back out of the atmosphere, and the only thing we have left to do that, because the oceans have gotten too warm to sequester much carbon anymore, they sequester more when they're cool, is the forests. They will do it by just leaving them alone. Isn't that amazing? A few people argue that wood is a carbon neutral fuel or product. However, this idea neglects the fact that, as climate scientist Dr. James Lutz says, quote, all the forests that had been studied for carbon content continue to sequester more and more carbon as the years go by indefinitely, as long as they are not logged. Muma, Messino, and Faison, and we've had people here talking, published a paper in June 2019 in which they note that intact forests largely free from human intervention. Oops, boy. I'm going to switch to the very end here. I'm going to skip most of my stuff. The large forested parts of the Amazon have become net emitters of carbon due to selective cutting that has degraded these forests. The ocean, as I said, the oceans are not able to sequester much anymore. And the forests in Massachusetts can be used for this. And why not? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Morgan?
Good afternoon. On August 21st of this year, the Wemble Forest Alliance filed suit against the DCR over a logging project in the Wemble State Forest, based in part on our concerns over the carbon impact of this plan. The Attorney General's office, in defense of DCR, sent a memo to the judge. This memo rejected the Alliance's contention that the DCR was withholding public records of its evaluation of the carbon impact of this project, because the DCR was not required to undertake such an evaluation. I quote the Attorney General's memo, DCR cannot produce records that don't exist. Imagine that. In the face of an existential environmental crisis, the agency tasked with protecting our public lands has chosen to ignore the carbon impacts of its actions. I find this disturbing and deeply shocking. Current science is clear. Leaving our mature forests undisturbed is our cheapest, fastest, and surest method of reducing atmospheric carbon. At a time when the Commonwealth is spending billions, and rightly so, on alternative energy, energy conservation, and climate resiliency, passing this bill will reduce our carbon footprint at little or no cost to the taxpayer. And just in passing on the economics of this, Wemble received $3,000 from the Wemble State Forest Logging Project, $3,000. In a community of 850 people, our library raises more than that every year through bake sales and